Yeah, so let's see, me, Ben, Daryl, Ryan. I think we got a quorum with 4, right?
I think so, yes.
All right, and yes, we can begin. For the sake of it, I think since we've again been through a couple of just my name is Freddie O'Connell. I represent Metro County 19th District, serve on CSC Homelessness Planning Council, and also chair the HMIS Oversight Committee. And Rachel, you're next on my screen.
Excellent. Hi, good morning. Rachel Cook. I'm the HMIS administrator here at the Metro Homeless Impact Division.
And Susie, I've got you next.
Hi, I'm Susie Talmy. I'm homeless coordinator at MDHA.
Ben?
Ben Grady. I am the database administrator at Nashville Rescue Mission.
Great, thank you. Ryan?
Ryan LeSueur, Executive Director at Community Care Fellowship.
Shanley?
Stanley Degnan. I work here at the Homeless Impact Division with Rachel on the HMIS team.
Great, and Daryl?
I just got an email from Daryl. He's not sure he can hear and see us, but he's not sure if he can talk.
Okay. Well, we'll let him listen in, and Daryl, figure out the audio. That'll be great.
You should be unmuted now.
Okay.
Can you
Daryl?
hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Great.
Okay. Well, we're still in the dinosaur age with our computers, so I'm trying to get updated where we can have camera and everything. So I'm doing the old way, you know, on the phone. So, but I can hear everybody.
Great.
And I can
Well, we're
see
glad.
you on the screen.
Well, I'm glad you're able to participate. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the team.
All right. Let's see. I don't have a whole lot of announcements except that this week the CSC played until this week is Wednesday last week, and we did get a great staff update from Rachel Shanley. So that was exciting to hear about. And I guess, Rachel, I will just turn it over to you. Don't have by way of announcement.
Sounds good. So a couple of things to talk about today. It might be good, actually, Shanley, if we give kind of the update that we gave to the Planning Council for anyone who was not present, just on kind of what's going on as far as data quality. But before that, to touch base about our ongoing discussion of onboarding new HMIS participating agencies. So we haven't had any new applications come in over the past couple of weeks, but we are continuing our conversation about the Vanderbilt Hospital social workers that we first introduced last time we met. We were able to have a follow-up discussion with Michelle Southard, who is a housing navigator for coordinated entry, who works with Vanderbilt Hospital Homeless Program. She was able to give us a lot more detail about what that would look like for a couple of the social workers in her department, how they would benefit from participating in HMIS, and a couple of points that we wanted to highlight are she identified 3 additional staff at the hospital who are social workers within the same department as their homeless program, and identified that she would be able to potentially serve as the agency point of contact, kind of agency administrator, to help monitor those users to make sure that they were upholding their end user agreements and things like that. The purpose would be for them to be able to view client records and see if they were already connected to agencies providing services or housing navigation, and they could update the client's current living situation in HMIS or their contact information and connect them back to that outreach worker or case manager who they were working with before. She gave a really great example, Michelle did, of once during a Vanderbilt case conferencing, like a patient was unable to access a specific resource because they did not have an ID. She was able to look them up in HMIS. They had a copy of the ID on file. She could print it off, and then they were able to access the resource. So that's like amazing. But if she's the only one there currently who has that access, she's not working with every single client. So from our perspective, that sounded really smart, really ideal, starting small. Some of the potential barriers that we talked about in this group last time was what kind of precedent does this set? What does this mean if the whole participating agency, quote unquote, is Vanderbilt? Like, what does that mean? But I think by looking at it as the Vanderbilt Hospital Homeless Program as the participating agency, and then Michelle serving as that point of contact and agency admin, that having a couple of people on her team with access, I think makes a lot of sense. So we wanted to bring that update to you guys. Shanley, is there anything else on that?
Well, real quick, Michael, would you make Stephanie a panelist? And then, yeah, I felt really good about the conversation. I just felt like I wanted some more clarity distinguishing Vanderbilt as a whole hospital versus the specific project made me feel really good, and it makes a ton of sense. So I think Rachel and I definitely landed on it being something we'd like to pursue, but wanted to make sure you guys all felt good about it too.
I think it makes a ton of sense on the basis of what you all have described. I guess, Rachel and Shanley, I would ask you both, do you need action from the committee or just a lack of objection from the committee?
Yeah, I think a lack of objection. Just wanted to
run
it by.
I will turn it over to other committee members to see if there's any other concern or discussion needed. Ben, Ryan, Daryl, any concerns from what staff are reporting on this front?
I mean, it sounds, I know that hospitals in general, I'm sure Vanderbilt in particular, work with the homeless population a fair amount. And so it just makes sense for the case managers there to have the ability to interface with the system that we're using to manage information.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that it's also bringing us down from the entirety of Vanderbilt, seeming like it's the participating agency. I think that was the big thing I was interested in when we discussed this last time, and it sounds like this is a pretty good approach. And I guess, Rachel, the one thing I would ask of you and Shanley is, from a committee standpoint, again, I sort of mentioned this last time, but if somehow management of that seems overwhelming, or if it needs some kind of additional resource, or you all wind up having concerns from the staff side of things, just please let the committee know sooner rather than later.
Cool, sounds good.
But I think if you all have the comfort and confidence to do this, my take is go for it.
Yeah, I think since we have that, especially since we have that relationship with Michelle, and she was able to very clearly outline what it would look like, I think that'll be great. The other agency that we wanted to touch on that we brought up at the last meeting was Before and After Tennessee. We were able to do a little bit of follow-up. I had a conversation with Tracy, who I don't think she could make it this morning to this committee, who had some of her colleagues had interacted with that agency before, and it was their recommendation to kind of put that on hold. We reached back out to JC, the man who had contacted us from that agency, and recommended that he get involved with the COC general membership and kind of spend some more time kind of becoming a part of that body and learning more about the COC, and then to perhaps circle back at a later time, which that I think would be a great kind of baseline criterion perhaps for future agencies. Some sort of involvement with the COC potentially, maybe not as a requirement, but maybe as a baseline, since or as we discussed in our policies and procedures, it just says like housing services related agency. So that's something to think about for future, but that's where we landed on that one. Any questions about that?
I like that approach a lot. I think, and the idea there was COC general membership or COC HPC?
Just general membership to start with, because they had not had previous involvement.
No, that seems like a great common sense approach, and I do agree that maybe we sort of normalize that. I don't know if we need it to be, you know, sort of a formal process or procedure, but I do think that's a good way to gauge that, hey, these folks are, I mean, all of what we're doing now is pretty aligned with the COC by design. And so I do think that's a really smart approach to saying, hey, this is sort of your entry point to, you know, being like having sort of just, it's almost like establishing credibility prior to just saying we have a totally open door policy for HMIS access. I like that. Anybody else got comments, concerns?
I agree with you, Freddie, on that. I think that's a good approach, and I think that's the best way to go about it from my concern point.
Cool. All right, I will say proceed, Rachel.
Amazing. So those are the only two new agencies on our radar at the moment, I believe. The other item on the agenda is discussing the data quality monitoring plan. But before we get into that, we can give kind of a brief update on what's going on with the data quality plan and data quality in general. So I'll throw it over to Shanley.
Yes, so actually in the strategic plan, the data quality plan is tasked to this committee. However, we are aware that this is like a big deal. Enforcing and implementing a data quality plan and a data quality monitoring plan really can't be just like a stagnant document that gets created and then sits somewhere. So strategically, we wanted to engage as many different committees and participants as we could in the creation of the plan, so that when it's time to be approved with the Homelessness Planning Council, it would really be meaningful to a lot of people already. So we have begun the process by getting feedback. Well, let me talk about what a data quality plan is, I guess. So the data quality plan is a pretty standard document in other COCs that sets some baseline expectations for participating agencies around what data is required or expected to be in HMIS for different project types, how and when it should be collected. And so right now we have some guidance that we can point back to generally from HUD, and then also the PEC, the Performance Evaluation Committee, has a really awesome process in place that we're able to point to as well for some data quality standards, but that's not really enforced across the whole HMIS participating agency spectrum. So this document is going to be a starting point for just clear expectations for data collection. The data quality monitoring plan is then the actionable steps that make sure that we're actually carrying out the data quality plan. So the process has begun with the data committee.
No,
we also have some participation. I'm sorry, I'm the most easily distracted. Hey, Daryl, I think your phone's unmuted. I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So the data committee, along with representation from the Performance Evaluation Committee and the Standards of Care Committee, are working together to set the benchmarks for the data quality components that lead to data quality. So that process has begun, which is very exciting. We had HUD technical assistants join us for our first meeting and just did like a lot of level setting. What are the different components, and what do they contribute towards the overall picture? So the next working group for that that project is going to be December 4th, I believe, and we've sort of divided up the tasks and we'll come together to put it together. And then from there, that whole document is going to come back to this committee to review. Any questions about like what the document will be or include, or what will need to be done once it gets to you all?
I think a good approach on that is just going, step by step as we need. And as for me, I've learned a lot of things from you guys. So I think as we go, and if I have any questions, I think we need to approach it that way. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm really excited about this. I think obviously so much is happening around HMIS right now with data sharing, and now these new ESG dollars, it's sort of forcing us to use HMIS more in the way that it was intended to be used in the first place, which can be a little uncomfortable. There's definitely a lot of growing pains happening right now, but I think in the end, it's going to create a lot of amazing data that we can look back at to actually evaluate what we're doing and assess what needs to be improved.
And to kind of begin the ramping up of our participating agencies kind of having their data quality on their radar, we began this month sending out a data quality report card to each participating agency and each project. It looks at the universal data elements, so things like demographic information, people's living situation prior to project entry, their destination at exit from a project, things like that, and gives a letter grade for them to use for their own purposes. It also gives client level detail on where the errors are so folks can go back and fix those things. Our intention is to produce those monthly so that agencies can stay on top of their own data quality and work with our agency points of contact to train them to run these reports themselves. This will be ongoing and something, like Shanley said, that we are hyper-focused right now due to necessity on these new ESG CV-funded agencies, which is the CARES Act money that is starting tons of new projects in all project types: emergency shelter projects, street outreach, rapid rehousing, and homelessness prevention. So due to the very stringent reporting requirements for those funded agencies, we're really solidifying some of our ideal practices of data quality monitoring across the board, and we'll implement that for not just funded agencies, but for all participating agencies, because the health of the data system-wide is really what is important. And we will kind of continue that conversation with the participating agencies. We've been slowly introducing it over time in our quarterly point of contact meetings, introducing, hey, this is being more closely looked at. So I think that's going really well. And then I think having the data quality plan in place will be super helpful to have something to point back to and something to give encouragement to folks who are doing it right and things like that.
So, Rachel and Shanley, I'm curious. I'm trying to remember from where we kind of started in thinking about data quality. I think we had, and Susie, you may have some insight into this too. I feel like there was an old data quality document we had. Is that true?
I think that it might have been part of the old policies and procedures, like some
That's
guidance
what it was. We agreed
on
now,
expectations.
and make it a
Yeah.
specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the way it's, go ahead. I was going to say the way it's broken up, it will be a bit more specific into looking at specific types of data quality like completeness, accuracy, timeliness. And there's another one, I don't remember. And giving specific thresholds and recommendations for this percent of information must be complete, for example, for different project types.
And so I guess just to make sure I'm understanding where we are on the two staff reports, like would we want this committee to draft a new doc? And should we start from scratch, or do you all want to just, work through the process a little bit and then come back and start a document once we get a little deeper into it?
I think I'm confused. Do you mean like the data quality plan?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So we've drafted a data quality plan based on HUD's example. We've reviewed several different communities' data quality plans. And through engaging all the different committees, I'm hopeful it's just like the bare bones of what it should be. And then we're hoping that through all of the different feedback, it can really reflect what Nashville needs. So I think a good bit of that will happen in this committee after the benchmarks are set.
Got it. Okay. That's what I wanted to get clarity on. All right. So you all will come back at some later date to review with the feedback you get.
Yes, that's the plan.
All right. Perfect.
Do you have there was like a data quality plan that was attached to a really early version of our policies and procedures. I don't know if you have access to that, because it was weird. It was like attached to it, and then all of a sudden it kind of disappeared. But if you want, I can try and find that and send it over.
Yeah, it's likely a similar format. But if you have it, I don't know if I was around yet. That might be good to have. I do have the old, like the MDHA one somewhere floating around.
That's probably what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it was Mandy who sent that.
I'll also say, and just because I'm excited about this piece, Susie and I are working. So Susie's part of that working group as well. Susie, myself, and TJ from Safe Haven met earlier this week to talk about coverage, which is one of the components that should be addressed in the data quality plan. And that's something that I'm really excited about talking more about is currently what do we have in HMIS and what part of the story does it tell? And then what are we missing and what part of the story is sort of in these other places in Nashville. So we're gonna try to format that in a way where we can be a little bit aspirational and identify the missing pieces and loosely threw around the idea of like setting some sort of goal to work towards an actual number of people experiencing homelessness in Nashville. So I'm excited about that. That'll be part of the plan too, which is a little different than the different elements that have more numbers that could be tied to outcomes.
Great. And I will just ask you both, is there a need for any committee action yet on your current progress or status?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't know that we have to wait for the benchmarks to be like official before we start looking at the other language in the document. Like, I don't think it would be inappropriate to start looking at that in like our next meeting or two, even if by that point the working group hadn't established the benchmarks. Like, the concepts will be the same regardless of the numbers they decide on.
That sounds good to me. So I'd say maybe let's plan on you all bringing what you think is an appropriate starting point either to the next meeting or one of our very soon upcoming meetings.
I think it provides an opportunity to educate just this committee and probably the data committee as well. If we look at the percentage of beds in emergency shelters, in transitional housing, in permanent supportive housing that actually are entered into HMIS, in the rapid rehousing and the permanent supportive housing, we're looking really good, like, the high 90s probably. In emergency shelter, I think we're at 6.9%. And that's kind of alarming as a statistic. And I also think that it is what it is. That kind of information needs to be shared with the community in terms of, even if we had excellent data quality in HMIS, it's a certain percentage of the data that's out there. So we've got a lot of work, and but I think that we could look at those numbers as they existed in the point in time count, and it's pretty clear why we don't know what we need to know as a community when we look at.
We could definitely pull some reports by project type to bring to the next committee meeting here. And this is something that Rachel and I are working, in addition to the report cards, we're trying to build up to the point where we haven't done a whole lot with data for a long time. So we don't want this to absolutely like shock and cripple everybody. Like it needs to be a little bit strategic. And so, yeah, we're hoping to start putting that information out by project type too. But I think that starting here with that conversation would be excellent. Yeah, starting to look by project type at outcomes, like that show things like 50 people from street outreach were served last year. It's like, okay, let's think about what that means. And as we start to put that data out, these agencies are going to start to say, wait, we served a lot, and I think that all of these newly funded ESG projects too will make a big difference in our coverage, because we have like 5 or 6 new emergency shelter projects, like 5 or 6 new street outreach projects that are all required to enter their data into HMIS. But it's an ongoing conversation. So we are ready to like start putting numbers out, even though they're not perfect. It's like we're using what we have, which has been like felt not okay in the past.
We're not perfect.
I mean, embarrassingly, yeah, don't worry, we will be. That's my only goal in life.
Glad to hear it.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on data quality? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
A little update, yeah. We mentioned HMIS licenses last time, I think, that we historically have always had a limited number of user licenses available, but it's never been an issue of like rationing them, because we just always had enough due to turnover. Always had kind of a pool to freely give them out. So we are working on, so we were able to get like a few emergency licenses with money from our HMIS capacity building grant for the meantime. But as long-term, to work this out, we are wanting to develop a plan, like a license issuing standard plan, to either determine how many licenses should be available to each project or agency based on how many folks they need to enter, or potentially how to set it up for agencies to purchase their own HMIS user licenses with grant money that is specified for that. We've talked to some folks from other Rachel's gone. Okay.
Yeah, Rachel, your audio just cut out on me.
I'll just pick up where she was saying, essentially just figuring out an equitable way to distribute the licenses. We have what we need right now for a second, but as we continue to try to increase coverage in Nashville, that will continue to be a barrier that we run into. And so we did actually ask that people write into their ESG applications dollars for licenses, but then we don't have a process to back that up moving forward. And so we essentially just want to come up with a documented process for how to do that. And so Rachel has submitted a question to some other COCs and HMISs and have found a couple examples of how they do that and do that fairly. And so would love to talk about that with you all as well.
Yeah, we're not prepared,
I guess,
to talk about specifics yet, but
I mean, we do need to be ready to think about it. I guess from a committee standpoint, it's going to be tough, right? We might be able to give guidance on a strategy, but we're not going to be able to come up with, you know, some unlimited number of new licenses out of the committee, right? So we might just need to say, all right, if this does become like a rationing scenario, what do we need to do, or do we need to, you know, what do we need to communicate out of the committee by way of securing new resources, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we're about there. We are rationing right now, and the concern, I mean, so other cities will have agencies pay. That's a pretty standard practice in some other cities. We don't necessarily feel that we have the buy-in across the board to enforce that and continue to try to get more information in HMIS while also having them pay. But then that's also, like we've talked about, that being like a legitimacy thing too. Like if you're paying for this license, that increases maybe the legitimacy around the whole thing. And so lots of different ideas and tactics we've thought about.
Yeah, and I've thought too along the lines of when you say that. I mean, I'm aware of some other models where it's kind of like, and coming back to the Vanderbilt discussion. Should we move to a place where it's kind of also organized on an ability to pay scenario where, you know, HID picks it up for smaller agencies, but at a certain scale, right? Maybe based on number of eligible end users, right? Or something like that, that you could look at the size of the organization and say, all right, how sustainable are your funding streams, et cetera, and just do some evaluation there. Kind of like, you know, a lot of grant processes do some of that exploration, and maybe we look at it that way. But worth going ahead and starting to think about. I mean, I guess if you all identify that as we add participating agencies and we really come up on a crunch and this increases in urgency, just let us know. But, you know, if you think there's an action we need to take sooner rather than later, I guess, Rachel, I'll trust you to put it on an agenda for us in an upcoming meeting.
good. I think that's all we've got from our end.
Okay, I have one piece of other business that I wanted to just check on since it also came up at COC HPC. Laura was mentioning the work that's underway to kind of connect the HPC work with the strategic plan and just sort of do some benchmarking there. Are you all on a staff level kind of in the loop with what she's working on, and or, you know, is the coordination within HID making sure that we're doing the stuff we want to do? And is it, let me ask it this way, is it worthwhile to sort of bring the data elements of the strategic plan to this committee and kind of have the committee review that in an upcoming agenda? Does that make sense?
Like the things on the strategic plan that we need to be circling back to?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
just kind of do our own
have that
internal benchmark.
Standing item, probably.
Okay, maybe, I mean, I think once or twice a year is probably fine, because I know we're making progress. I think it would be good to just sort of, you know, be able to highlight items in green when we kind of accomplish them in a way that is consistent with the plan. Just generally, are you all able to kind of see progress along that as a kind of document, and are you, Judy, Paula, and Laura, are you kind of like, is it connecting to what HMIS is doing from a plan level?
Yeah, someone on the phone has their hand raised.
Oh yeah, sorry, I saw a call on you. I didn't see that before. If whoever's got your hand up, I guess maybe we can unmute and go there. Michael, are you able to get that caller access?
They're unmuted.
Okay, great.
It looks
Caller,
like they
you
just
wanna-
hung up.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, go ahead, Rachel.
It was a prank caller. It's probably Nicole. So I lost my train of thought. Oh, so it's been a couple months now since I've seen like an updated version of like, here's where all the goals are. And I think that like I personally, our team hasn't heard an update. And I'm not sure if like the executive committee, I think, is reviewing it each month before the planning council meeting to see like where everyone is on things, but I don't have anything other than that.
Let's do this then. Maybe if because we'll have what, one more meeting before the end of the year. Is that right? Maybe at that last
yes,
meeting.
we'll need to look at the.
Yeah, so let's maybe at the final meeting of the year just kind of check in on the elements that would be relevant to this committee and just kind of check our progress so we can sort of self-benchmark. I think that would be a good agenda item for the next meeting. All right, anybody else got other business? All right, well, we will look to you, Rachel, to help us get that final meeting of 2020 scheduled, and then hopefully everyone can close the books on this terrible year in good health. So have a safe and as much joy as you can muster holidays, and I will look forward to seeing everybody soon.
I second.
Thanks for
All
that.
Don't eat too much turkey.
Take care.
Happy
Okay.
Thanksgiving,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Michael.
Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.